and welcome to Art Talk Out West. My name is Charnel and I am the host of this podcast, and I am very excited to take you on this journey with me. But before we get into it, I would like to pay respects to the traditional custodians of the land, the Cabral people of the Darug Nation, and I recognize their connection to this land and recognize that they are the first storytellers and creatives on this land. And we are here in Fairfield, and I pay respects to elders past, present, and future. So what is Art Talk Out West? So we are a podcast coming out of PYT in Fairfield, and we are aiming to spotlight artists that come from the West and that most of them have some connection to PYT in Fairfield. And I myself am a multidisciplinary artist from PYT and a healthcare worker. So I have found myself in a really interesting position and stage in my life where I have a really lovely network of creatives and artists around me, which I want to showcase and talk to them and share with you guys. So to start off our first episode of this podcast, I am very lucky to have the lovely Bina here with me. Hello, Bina.
Hi, Charnel. It's amazing to be your first customer. What's the term? Guest. I'm the first guest on your podcast.
First guest on my podcast. I am honoured, Bina, and I think I chose Bina because Bina was one of my first mentors, and Bina's made a really amazing impact in my own career as an artist. And so it's not about me today, though. It's about Bina because I think Bina has so much to share with the world, and I really just want to spotlight you. Because I know you do share a lot with us through your socials, through your work, through your role as a mentor, but there's still things I want to kind of know about you and unpack about what's come before your art and what's made you the artist you are today.
Absolutely, let's get into it.
First of all, Bina, introduce yourself. What is your art practice?
I'm Bina. I am a filmmaker first and a theatre maker second, or maybe I'm a theatre maker first and a filmmaker second. One is my wife, one is my mistress, and I cycle through which one I'm feeling about. But I've always been interested in drama and storytelling. There's a video of me on my 7th birthday, bossing my friends around and bossing my father around with his old camcorder and telling them, I gave them a script that I'd printed out and telling them what to do. So that's me. But I've had a lot of success as a filmmaker. So I was a writer on a film called Here Out West.
Yes.
I run my own production company. I've done music videos, corporate videos, short films. But my big thing was my debut feature From All Sides, which I wrote and directed and produced.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Was
selected for the Goes to Cannes showcase this year. So I was at the Cannes Film Festival with my film and obviously reviewing all the offers that came out of that. So that was big triumph for me. And I made it with the support of PYT Fairfield and my community. So I'm really excited to talk about that because I think one thing we have in the West is community, and we do that better than anyone else. So I also work at PYT Fairfield,
yes,
running the ensemble program.
Mm-hmm.
So really our goal is to encourage people from this area and give them the kind of practical support to actually become professional artists. You are an amazing case study. You came to us with a passion for the arts and you were working as a speech therapist. Mm-hmm. And we gave you every opportunity because we could sense that you were hungry. So you ended up performing at Bring It On Festival. You ended up being part of Hair. Mm-hmm. And now you're at a point where, you're pretty happening artist in your own right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's it. I work at PYT Fairfield. I kind of say I can't make art without activism and advocacy, the 3 A's.
That's it, yeah.
So yeah, we're not making art in a vacuum, and that actually frankly doesn't really interest me at all. I'm very interested in having some kind of social impact to the arts. I think it's really important. It's as important as I worked in health for many years, and I think I was kidding myself because I think I have such a real and better benefit on people's lives working through PYT Fairfield. But that's basically it. That's my very long-winded answer. I work in film and theatre. My passion is kind of cross-cultural storytelling and always making sure that when I do make art, it's in a practice that's empowering and uplifting for the people I work with.
I love that. And that's what really drew me to you and your art practice when I first met you. I think the first time I came across your work was actually, I saw your scene in Here Out West. That's the first day I actually met you, in the screening in Campbelltown Arts, was it?
It was Casula Powerhouse.
Casula Powerhouse. Like, this was 3 years ago now, I think. Yes, and I remember I was watching the film. I think you invited me to it because it was before I had joined PYT.
So you had actually come to the ensemble showcase.
Yes,
so
I
the
did.
first year I was in ensemble, that was 2021.
Yeah.
And that was a really tumultuous year. We had the lockdown, we had a change of management at PYT Fairfield. It was really stressful.
Yeah.
So we kind of cobbled together a show.
Yeah.
And you came to that because you were interested in joining the following year.
Yeah, I was wondering if I'd get in or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's the interesting thing, because I think a lot of artists, it's like, you audition and you're in a room full of really intimidating people. And I always say, I don't really care if you've never acted before. What I look for when I recruit the ensemble is connection to this community.
Yeah.
The more Fairfield you are, the more you will almost definitely be invited in, because I just feel like that is the best way to ensure authenticity and to make sure that we're uplifting the people that we're funded to, which is this specific community. So I say this, Jax and I say this, Jacqueline and Hornjick, my amazing boss at PYT Fairfield, not all Western Sydney is created equal. There is something very particular about this section of very multicultural, ethnic Western Sydney.
That's very true.
That's not like Parramatta, it's not like Penrith, it's not like the Hills, it's not even like Campbelltown, which is where I live.
Yeah.
There's something unique about this area, and it probably needs, it needs a really bespoke approach.
Right. And it's lovely. And it's lovely that we have us artists coming out of this area. I don't think a lot of people realise that there's this theatre in Fairfield and we're all just working on stuff and producing amazing work. So thank you for the work you do in that.
Thank you.
Well.
I love it. I have the best job in the world.
Yeah, I believe you. Okay, Bina, I want to get into your history.
Yeah.
Your upbringing. So what was it like growing up? Tell us, where did you grow up? Where are your parents from? How was it like growing up?
Yeah, I was born in 1986, so I'm never shy about my age. I was born in 1986. I graduated high school in 2003. I grew up on the seat of Reed, so it's sort of where the inner west borders the west, which I think sums me up perfectly because my mum's white and my dad was Indian.
Yeah.
So I was 1 foot in kind of trendy white person land and I was 1 foot in deep ethnic Western Sydney.
Yes.
So I went to Strathfield Girls High School, which is like back then, and it probably still is now, about 90% like non-English speaking background. There were maybe 10 white girls in my year of 200. And that's very Western Sydney, so that's where I went to school. I got called a Westie growing up, although now when I tell people that, my mum lives in Croydon, they're like, that's the inner west. I'm like, yes, it was, but back then the line has changed because of urban succession and gentrification.
Yes.
But back then I was very much called a Westie, and now I live in Campbelltown, which is about as west as you can get.
Oh, very.
But I think my willingness to live in Campbelltown, like I have other friends, I feel like if you were white and you grew up on that kind of seat of Reed where the inner west meets the west, you like wanted to go and live in the city, but because I'm brown and it was important to me to live amongst my people, I moved to Campbelltown. So I grew up on the border. I went to Strathfield Girls High, which was very, very, very multicultural. And I wasn't the only no, there was one other mixed race girl in my year, but I really had this feeling of not being white enough and not being brown enough.
Yes.
So it's a cliche, but it's really true. It's so different now. Do you know? I feel like there are so many more mixed race people now. Just because it's and particularly in Western Sydney, because you mix with people from all over. Yeah. But when I was growing up, I really felt like I stood out. So I was too much of a hussy to be a good Indian girl, and I was like too uncool to be like a white girl. So I really felt that growing up. And I think it's really interesting that I'm married. My husband is also mixed race. He has a Filipino mother and a Scottish dad.
Great.
So, and that was actually really, I remember when I met him, what a light bulb moment it was. And now I mix with mixed race people all the time now. It's really, really common. Yeah. But I do think we have something that we understand. So I had a crazy Indian dad who was like really strict and wanted me to be academically successful, and I had a lot of pressure to be the good Indian girl. But I also had my mum who was good cop to him, which is unusual because I was allowed to have boyfriends and go to sleepovers and things that a lot of the kind of Indian girls that had two Indian parents weren't allowed to do.
Yeah, no. I wasn't allowed to do any of that.
Yeah. So that's the difference.
Yes. Wow.
So I always say, if you really wanted to think of like a famous person whose upbringing is probably the most similar to mine, it's Barack Obama. Because Barack Obama is mixed race, right? He's always coded as black, and he is black, but he had something that I had, which was a white mum.
Wow.
Did you not know that?
I did not know that.
Right.
I'm embarrassed to say I did not know that.
Yeah, so Barack Obama's not only did he have a white mum, she was like a professor of anthropology, which is not dissimilar to my mum. My mum was a history PhD, right?
Okay,
So my parents were both academics.
Yes.
And this is also why it's unusual, because most migrants have a kind of big loss of social status when they migrate. But my dad had a PhD from Manchester University.
Yeah.
So he had a British qualification that was recognised in Australia.
Wow, yes.
Very different.
Very different.
So very different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always say this. Obama had his father was an international student from Kenya, so not a descendant from slaves, a middle class person from Africa.
Yes.
My dad was a middle class person from India.
Yeah.
Came to Australia, married his white mother. Whereas like Michelle Obama grew up in the south side of Chicago. She was descended from slaves. So she had that intergenerational trauma. She had 2 African-American parents.
Yes.
I always say this because I think it's just a really great way to kind of talk about, I just don't think we don't talk about this sort of intersectional, multiracial identity enough.
Right,
and even my husband and I, this is not uncommon. You have Asian mother, white dad.
Yes.
Very, very common.
Very common, yeah.
It's very different because he gets name privilege. He has a British name. But I get mum privilege. I have a very ethnic name that probably worked against me when I was trying to find jobs.
Yeah.
But I had a white lady in my corner growing up. So that's my very long-winded answer. I grew up on the border and everything about my identity has always been a foot in one and a foot in the other.
Interesting. I see that in you now as a person, though. And I can see how you kind of combine both sides, which I think you use it to your advantage really well. If I'm using the incorrect words, let me know.
Oh, no, not at all.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like too white or too Indian for this crowd and this crowd. That's interesting. It's something I obviously cannot relate to, but I have friends who are mixed race and they tell me similar things as well.
I think you can relate.
Because I do want to say this, because growing up, I have 2 Lebanese parents. I grew up in Maryland in a Lebanese community. All my cousins are around me. But sometimes it still felt like I wasn't Lebanese enough for my community.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is one of the most interesting things I've kind of worked out as an adult. So when I was a teenager, and this is very common, I was very embarrassed by my Indianness. I was embarrassed by my uncle father who was really strict and wanted me to study all the time.
Yeah.
I was really embarrassed by that. I had white friends. I had white boyfriends because they were the most accessible. They were the ones that were allowed to date and whatever. But there was also so much internalized racism there.
Yeah.
So I did not feel strong at all in my identity, and I was super whitewashed, and I started to unpack this the older I got, and I'd realized this was really a common experience when you grow up ethnic of any breed, that you kind of desperately want to run away from it and be like everybody else when you're a teenager and embrace it as you get older.
Right. Yeah.
Very common, right? This is a really common trajectory. It's definitely everybody I know. But what I think is interesting is all these hallmarks of what I see as being like a mixed race person. I have found that amongst my friend group, even people like yourself, you're hood AF, you grew up in Maryland's, but amongst migrant communities, even amongst siblings, you'll meet people and one feels much stronger in their identity than the other.
That's true.
I have Filipino cousins. I'm always like, because I'm mixed race, I didn't speak my dad's language. It was the subject of my chapter in Here Out West.
Yeah.
But most of Alex's, my husband's Filipino cousins don't speak Tagalog and don't really have much of an interest in learning it. So they've been whitewashed too, even if they have 2 Filipino parents.
Yes.
You would have gone to school with girls, so your Arabic is quite good. You always downgrade it, but it's actually quite good.
Thank you.
But you would have gone to school with Lebanese girls whose Arabic wasn't great.
That's true, yes.
Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Even amongst my cousins. So I actually feel this. My cousins, here on my mum's side, a lot of their parents are Lebanese but born here. Whereas my dad is Lebanese from Lebanon, straight out of the Lebanese military.
When I met your dad, I was actually really shocked. Because you'd always you're like, oh, my Arabic's not that good, blah, blah, blah. And I met your dad and he's smoking a cigarette and speaking Arabic. I'm like, oh, Charnel's dad is very, very
My
learned.
dad is
Yeah. He didn't have an Australian upbringing. Amongst the Italian community, you'll meet that. You'll meet people that have really varying identification. So I'm working at the moment with a wonderful woman called Julia Vasnakis, and she grew up in Adelaide and she's Greek Australian. But I tease her, I'm like, bro, in Adelaide, you would have felt so exotic.
Right.
Because not only is she Greek, she was raised Orthodox and she speaks the language.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas I meet lots of Greek Australians in Sydney and it's kind of like maybe they have a Greek grandparent.
That's it.
And they kind of, So the point I'm trying to make is that I always attributed my weirdness or kind of my unease to being mixed race. But I think it's just a general, I love this term, third culture kid problem.
Yes.
So anyone who grows up away from their parents' motherland, whether they're mixed race or not, is what we call a third culture kid.
Yes.
And if you're a third culture kid, you will have varying degrees of identification with things like language, religion, your parents' culture.
Right.
It depends on where you grew up. If you ever meet, I guarantee you, if you went to a Lebanese person who had grown up in the country, completely different.
Oh, they're very different. And I actually come across Lebanese people who grew up in the country when I go apple picking with my parents. And
Right.
there are Lebanese people who own these farms, and they're so different. I have to I ask myself, are they actually Lebanese? But they are, but they're just different.
Because when you grow up in a regional centre, you assimilate very differently.
That's it.
So something I thought was really, if you meet Indians who grew up in like Coffs Harbour, they'll have full-on Aussie accents.
They have so many banana farms.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll have full-on Aussie accents.
Yeah.
But if you meet an Indian, so someone like me, I grew up in an enclave of Indians, or South Asians. Sri Lankans actually was the dominant community at Stratford Girls. There was a big Tamil community there.
Yes.
If that's the community you've grown up with, then yes, I felt very strong in my identity. So it's really interesting. I actually had lunch with a filmmaker yesterday, and he's Indian, 2 Indian parents, but he is much less strong in his Indianness than me.
Wow,
Do you know, I grew up on Bollywood, I grew up on Indian films, I grew up on Carnatic recitals, I've spent time in India.
Yes,
so I actually feel super strong.
Yeah.
And I guess that's taken me till now, but now I feel very, very strong. I couldn't have Indian dance in my film, and you've seen my film.
I loved it.
The way I did, unless I felt like I was really confident talking about Indian dance.
Right, good. And that Indian dance scene in your film is my favourite scene.
It's the best scene. But it's also like, it's not a representation we see very often, because it's always like, Indians in the Anglosphere, they're always like pathetic and effeminate and, dorky. And then I have this representation that's really empowered, but they're really strong in their culture.
Yeah.
So I feel like, it's a lot of what I thought was me being mixed race is actually really common across migrant communities.
It is.
Regardless of was it your parents that came with your grandparents? Did you speak the language at home? Were you religious? Within families, like you have a little sister.
Yes, yeah.
Is she, where's she on the Leb scale?
Yeah.
Like here is, over here is Bob Catter and over here is Antoinette Lattouf. Where's your sister?
God, I'd say, she's in it. My sister is very much these days into our like Maronite religion, which is part of our Lebanese culture. She's very much on that side of it.
Yeah.
But I think and maybe this is just a reflection of our personalities, but I'm very much like, I love our culture. I love the artists and creatives that come out of it. I love just sitting and drinking a coffee. I want to know about the history of Lebanon. I really want to do all that. Whereas my sister is really diving into the religious side of our culture.
And that's not uncommon in families. I think it's just so interesting that even people who've been raised by the same parents, you'll get that kind of difference within a family.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting.
So if rounding that up, how do you think, and has it, being mixed race and this upbringing you have, has this played a role in the type of art you make now?
1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time. I'm 100% Australian. I'm 100% Indian. I am both. I'm not half anything. I grew up. So I really want to say this. Neither of my parents listened to popular music. So I felt so uncool because I just didn't have a compass around music that was trendy or whatever.
Yeah.
My mother only listens to classical music. So my mum grew up in Adelaide. So that's like being white on steroids. Like that's whitest of the white. They're so white, right? So my mum grew up in Adelaide. She's got blonde hair and blue eyes and fair skin and freckles. And she loves classical music, loves choral music. She raised me listening to ABC Classic FM, which is about the most white person institution you could ever have access to. Yeah. But I really love it. I was listening to it on my way to work. I put it on. It's very relaxing.
You told me this. You always listen to it.
I listen to ABC Classic FM because it's like the most relaxing thing I can listen to, and it's really beautiful. Like when you hear a symphony, the loudest loud and the quietest quiet, and like the quietest piccolo and the deepest kind of brass section, it's actually really amazing. Yeah. The music's incredible. But equally, I grew up with my father's taste, which was, like Bollywood movies from the 80s.
I love that.
Back when I could do a whole side conversation about how the particular generation of Bollywood movies I was raised on spoke to India, pre kind of, globalization, blah, blah. Whole other conversation. But I grew up on Mithun Chakraborty's films. But also Indian art cinema. So Satyajit Roy, who is one of the great filmmakers in the world. He was the first non-European to win the Golden Bear at Venice. Amazing. Yeah. Wow. So I got taken to Carnatic recitals. Oh, wow. And my mum was just as interested as my dad. But I sat through tabla, concerts and things. So I had both. Nice. I had both in my family. Yeah. And I feel like as an adult, I lean on both. I feel like I make work that speaks to native English speakers, but also immigrant and Indian very deeply in a way that, yeah, like I say, I had lunch with this other filmmaker yesterday, and he is definitely, like, he has 2 Indian parents, but it doesn't feature as heavily in his work, and that's his choice.
Yes.
That's his choice. He's allowed to make whatever he wants.
He's allowed to, yeah. There's that thing about, like, when do we get to the point where I'm a Lebanese artist, or I'm an Indian Australian artist, or I'm an artist from the West, which I think we love repping that. I personally love repping it, but also when can we also just be an artist?
Well, I mean, look, let's talk about Indians in Australia. So we are such a huge community. We are so visible in the arts. We have the world's most prolific film industry, and we are woefully underrepresented in this country.
Yeah.
There are other countries where that is better, like Britain, and I lived in London for 2 years, and Indian visibility was huge, right? Or South Asian visibility. And I also spent a lot of time in the United States. So put it this way, M. Night Shyamalan, who's Indian, grew up in Philadelphia, made The Sixth Sense in the 90s, in 1999.
Oh, that's my birth year.
He made, that's made me feel very old. In 1999, which was like the seminal year for film, M. Night Shyamalan made The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, wow.
There's no Indianness. He just made a genre film with Bruce Willis.
Amazing. Yeah.
Asif Kapadia,
yeah,
who is a South Asian filmmaker in the UK. He directed the Amy Winehouse documentary.
Oh, amazing.
Which is amazing. You love Amy Winehouse?
I love... Amy Winehouse is what got me into singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amy Winehouse documentary was directed by a guy called Asif Kapadia. He also directed the Senna documentary.
Yeah.
So he's a South Asian filmmaker making documentaries about stuff that interests him.
Amazing.
I know, but I do both. Can I say my slate? My slate is like 50% non-Indian stories and 50% Indian stories.
Yeah.
And you know, I love that, and there's strength in that. But I always say this: it has to be on your own terms.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think the strength of, like, we're moving out of this phase where we're still making stuff for the white gaze, and I think there'll be a time where we're free to participate on an equal playing field and just tell stories that interest us.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to be about us and our community.
Yeah, lovely, cool. One thing I really love about you, and I really got this from All Sides, and I want you to speak on this, is from All Sides. You brought in this concept of a woman of colour, and then you mixed it with lots of themes of sexuality, which we do not see enough of. And that really spoke to me. I love that. How was it navigating that? And how was it navigating that by keeping in mind that you had your community around you, and how was the Indian community going to receive that? How was your family going to receive that?
It's a really good question, because maybe I wouldn't have felt confident to make it if I had 2 Indian parents.
Right, yeah.
You know, my dad is dead.
Yeah.
He's not around to see the film. I do think he'd be proud of me.
Yes.
And I do think he would like the film.
Yes.
Just men are weird about their daughters.
This is
of
true.
any race. But I remember you asked me at the time, you're like, what do your family think? And I said, I have 2 kids. So, my mother as well would never censor my work, and she's pretty open-minded, although I think some of it shocked her a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to make, I say this, as an artist, you need to make the film that only you can make. And it doesn't have to be cultural, but I think sometimes that's, I see a lot of artists who don't lean into that when it actually is a thing that makes them special. And it doesn't mean, it's subtle as well. Like, okay, I feel like, yes, you've talked about, like, spirituality can be a feature of how closely you identify with your culture. But, like, another really big one is sense of humor, optimism, how optimistic or pessimistic you are can be really culturally influenced. How philosophical you are, how you think about time, how you think about family. And so sometimes that can really enrich your work. And so, you know, it doesn't mean you're necessarily making films about your community, but you're making it with your sense of humor.
Yes.
Do you know, with an Indian sense of humor, or an Indian sense of curiosity about the world, you know? So that's the first thing. But I made With From All Sides, which is my film, and it's about a middle-aged multiracial couple in an open relationship and their teenage children living in suburbia. Yeah. And it was very unusual. No one had made a film like this before.
No one had.
No one had. And I think that's because, I think a lot of people would be too scared to make it.
Too scared, that's it.
But I'm not really scared. I think, look, if people hate my movie, I've kind of won, because it means people are watching it.
Right.
So I'm less bothered by that. There are times when I think, you know, are my children going to have a problem when they get older? But I don't think so. Because, you know, you have women who are actresses and they're in racy movies, and they have kids, and it doesn't seem to be a huge thing. But I wanted to, I was, and look, to go back to your question, I was nervous the whole time. I'm like, I'm making this movie and it has an Indian woman who is naked at an orgy in the first scene. Yeah. Right? It's
first scene right there.
Swingers bar, you know, she's there with her husband and they're hooking up with another couple, and that's the very first scene. And then you see them go home and deal with their families and having to kind of live a double life a little bit. I was pleasantly surprised. I have never ever had an Indian person object to my film. Every single Indian who has seen my film has absolutely loved it.
Oh, lovely. Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, because I think they're used to, I feel like the anti-racism stuff is the Trojan horse and like having amazing Indian dance, and then they don't really care about the sexuality.
Yeah.
And they're probably used to seeing stuff like that anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah. I just say, like, you know,
I think that also shows that sometimes taking the risk is not a bad thing, and it's what needs to be done. And I'm glad you had the courage to do so.
Well, okay. So I'm going to tell two stories of kind of having to really think carefully about it. One of the favourite characters in From All Sides is the teenage son, who is struggling with masculinity in Australia, and I felt like this was a really underexplored thing.
But Bina, can I say, in this last week, I've had this conversation about young ethnic teenage boys struggling with their masculinity and identity with multiple different people, and it's leading them down a really dark path. So I love that you put this in. Sorry, continue.
Oh, of course. So look, I'm really proud of the scene. I wanted to have... So something I really wanted to destabilize with my film was the model minority, this idea that ethnics have to be well-behaved.
Yes.
And most writers internalize this on some level. So they only want to tell good stories about their community because they're sick of all the bad ones.
Right.
Or they have characters that are really kind of, you know, overly virtuous, and therefore compromised on their humanity and less relatable. And I thought it was really important to tell a story where the characters are like people of colour, but they're flawed and they make mistakes and they don't always do the right thing. Because I think like that's human and we're allowed to behave badly sometimes.
That's it.
So the son in From All Sides is called Clyde, and he is struggling with being an Indian man. And he, of course, I see this a lot of young Indian men, the only role models they have are like dweeby IT guys, and they want to prove that they're cool and masculine.
Right.
So the clumsiest kind of approximation is sort of African American rap culture, where they at least get to be cool and masculine.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll meet young Indian men who use the N-word.
Yes.
It's not okay, and they need to be told to stop.
Yeah.
But it's not coming from a malicious place.
Yeah.
It's coming from confusion around, but I'm a tough man. Do you know? So I wanted to explore that and to actually model like what those conversations, because his mother is the one who pulls him up on it.
Yeah.
So I was nervous about the young man who played that is a young guy from this community. He lives in West Hoxton, right?
Yeah.
And I was so nervous because his parents had to approve of the film.
Yes.
He did not read the whole script because it was R-rated, or it was at least very mature. He was 15 at the time.
Yeah.
His parents had to read the whole script. His agent had to know what the film was about.
Ooh.
And I was... they had to be on set with him.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, he's not in any of the racy scenes, but like his parents had to be on set. So I was so panicked the whole time. And I basically was really nice to his parents and said that this was a film for adults and that it was a really great role and it was an unusual role that he wasn't likely to get.
Yeah.
And his parents are my biggest champions. They loved the film.
Amazing.
They like always posting about it because the Indian dance spoke to them, and the positive, like when I say positive, the empowered portrayal of Indians who are strong in their culture spoke to them. And they love that so much, I think they overlook the rest of it. And the second person I was really worried about, so I really wanted to have Indian dance or South Asian dance. It's actually Bharatanatyam is actually it's actually Tamil, the dancing that's in my film. So it's actually from Sri Lanka in the south.
Yes.
But it is just exquisite. I think it's the most beautiful art form, and I wanted to put it on an Australian screen, and I wanted to have this storyline where a very whitewashed teenager who has trained in ballet her whole life dips her toe into Indian classical dance.
Oh, nice.
So that was the idea. And I got Seren Sribalan, who's an absolutely just gifted beyond words choreographer. I got in touch with him and I was like, hi, Seren, I'm making a film and I kind of need a Bharatanatyam choreographer and dance instructor.
Yeah.
So you should probably know the film is a bit risque.
Yeah.
Because what I was worried about was a lot of Indian dance is kind of devotional. It's sort of worshipping the gods and it's telling religious stories.
Yeah.
And how will they feel about Indian devotional dance in a very sexy movie.
Yeah.
And Seren just looked at me and said, I think you really underestimate our community, Bina. And he was right.
Yes. Yeah.
He was right.
Yes.
I did underestimate them. I did think they were going to jump to conclusions, but like I've not had any problems. So I think all I'm going to say is you're not going to know until you try. I think it's natural to be concerned about what your community will think. And that's not something, I say this all the time to POC creatives, and I've had this conversation with you. white people don't have to worry about this stuff.
White people can tell any story they want.
So if you're an Anglo person, if you're in the dominant culture,
Yes.
you can tell a story about criminals from your community.
Yep.
You can tell stories about misogyny in your
Yep.
community. You can tell any story you want.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is going to point fingers at you.
That's it.
Right? But if I say as a South Asian person, as a South Asian woman, if I wanted to make a film about like domestic violence in our
Right.
culture, in our community, I would get fingers pointed at me and like,
Yes.
you're a traitor and you're casting aspersions, because we're scared that our work will be weaponized against people from outside the community. So they'll go, see, we let these people into our country and look, they're awful and they have
Right.
horrible attitudes to women. So
Yeah.
something I train you guys as much as I can in my role at PYT Fairfield is to really think about, okay, would this be an issue if I wasn't a person of colour? And if it isn't, well, then I think you should just be able to tell your story.
Yes.
People disagree with me. Some people are like, no, but you do have community implications and you do. But I'm like, but then you're trying to, you're second guessing how people are going to receive your work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how healthy that is if you're an artist,
And it's difficult as well, because when we make work, we do want to speak to our community and make them feel seen, but we also don't want them to feel like we're turning our backs on them. Just we obviously don't want them to feel that. I know in some of my work is like quite different to yours, but some of like my writing pieces where I speak of my community and culture or experiences in my upbringing, I'm always worried is like, I don't want people to have this negative concept of what my life was like or what my culture is like or what people living like us is like. That I'm using a lot of words that aren't making sense, but I'm always weary of that as an artist. But then I kind of came to the conclusion that, well, if it's what I want to put out, and sometimes it's a way of me healing, I put it out. But I found through that a lot of people actually really resonated with the writing I put out, and a lot of people thanked me for putting it out, which kind of showed me that, well, maybe these things aren't so taboo and everyone's kind of experiencing it, but we're just scared to speak on it, especially publicly.
Well, yeah, you've been, like, your community as
Yeah.
well has been particularly maligned.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
When I was growing up as well, definitely, like, the lebs
Yeah.
it was a very disparaging
The
term.
lebs,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and people would say it openly, like, oh, look what's happened to Bankstown. See, we let them in and they ruin our suburbs. This kind of awful,
Yes.
really racist commentary was very much around when I was when I was at school. So, it's just like you've got two hands tied behind your back, because you're trying to be an artist, which is all about self-expression and speaking unpleasant truths sometimes, but you're doing it in a climate of a country that has demonized your culture and your community.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And that's just not fair, because like I say, white people don't have to think about this shit. They don't have to go, what's the Daily Telegraph going to say?
That's
Because
true.
they'll always be on the right side of it. They'll
That's
always be on the
true.
side being worshipped of it. Like, they can tell whatever story they want.
That's very
And
true.
I just feel like, you're letting them win if we self-censor. If we go, we're not allowed to talk about that because it might upset the Alan Jones of the world, well, then they've won. They've silenced us. They've put us in our box, which is what they want.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's true. And also, because I really love with you about how you use these themes of sexuality in your work, right? But also, who says in our cultures that we are not sexual people?
Bro, Indians taught the rest of the world to make love. I just want to put that out there.
You always say this, yeah.
I've been to enough Hindu temples with the erotic art, and my parents took me when I was like 8,
Yes.
and I remember being so shocked.
Yes, yeah.
Because I got this really, pathetic, version of Indian culture where it's like, super lame. Like, hello, and The Big Bang Theory, Raj was the most attractive out of all of them.
Right.
Can we just say that? Like, he was.
I agree.
And he had to play the one that was like pathetic and sexless, and
Yes.
it's always self-deprecating. So I mean, and I think that's for me. It's like, where does this come from? And it's usually about control of women.
In our cultures, you think? Yeah.
But just across the world.
Yes. And I also, the way I have it really simple in my mind is white people just be a bit more expressive about their, sexuality and sexual experiences and stuff. I'm just thinking back to when I was at school.
Yeah.
My white friends, they'd be, saying, oh, yeah, I did this and this and this. Whereas, my ethnic friends, no one's sharing that. We're kind of, shy. And I don't know, I think that just comes probably from our upbringing and probably from our culture. I guess I can say, in my culture, I guess it is obviously very taboo to speak on anything sexual, no, don't watch that kissing scene, turn your head.
I know.
But also we're human and everyone's kissing, do you know where?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I definitely was a total. I know that kind of slut shaming from the ethnic community, and I think it sucks, and I think it's really sexist, and it needs to stop.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And it holds us back.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like, I always just joke. I'm like, there's a billion Indians. Like, we know where babies come from.
Yes.
Clearly. So I don't know, and I just think there's also there's a really rich history of South Asians telling like quite sexually explicit stories, not just the Kama Sutra. But like someone like in the 90s when I was growing up, so Arundhati Roy wrote The God of Small Things, which has really amazing and quite taboo sexuality in between caste as well. So there was a lot of taboos in there. And one of my favorite writers, in fact maybe my favorite writer, is Hanif Qureshi, who really similar to me. He had a Pakistani dad and a white mother, and he grew up in Britain, and he was bisexual, and he wrote an amazing book, which is maybe my favorite book. It's called The Buddha of Suburbia.
Okay, yeah.
And he wrote this in the early 90s. Like, that's where the conversation was in Britain. What did we have? We had bloody Looking for Ella Brandy. We had an Italian girl who like wanted white people to like her
Looking for Ella Brandy,
had no ethnic friends, and like that was supposed to be our role model of what multiculturalism looked like in Australia. Like,
but you know what's funny? Because I studied Looking for Ella Brandy in high school English, and that was what I had to look up to, and I really actually loved it because
the only representation you had.
And she wasn't even Lebanese. Like she was ethnic. But then, then that's another conversation.
Well, but I literally said this in a DramaCon last year. I said like the only multicultural text I had access to growing up was Looking for Ella Brandy, that was Australian,
right?
And she's like a terrible role model for ethnic girls. I'm sorry, but like, she goes to a Catholic school. She as a complete like all her friends are she sucks up to white people. She wants white people to like her really badly, but she thinks she's an Italian who thinks she's the most oppressed person on the planet. Maybe in the 70s that was the case, but can I tell you, by the 90s, that needle had shifted.
It changed.
So I was just like, in the early 90s, we're trying to believe this like version of Australian history where Italians were still the most oppressed people in the racial hierarchy, and I'm like, think it's moved since then.
It is moved.
But that's what we had to look up to, and I was
the
just
Lebs
like, okay.
came.
Well, that's kind of right.
Really though, yeah, we came. All right, thank you, Bina. We can talk all day. And I guess I only bring up that sexuality topic because I'm saying, I guess, thank you on behalf of a lot of people. I think you make a lot of people feel really seen when you do these lovely scenes of a woman of color exploring her sexuality. So that's a really beautiful thing.
That's all I wanted.
Good. Bina, I'm very interested in what your day-to-day life looks like.
Yeah,
now,
sure.
I'm interested in... Because obviously as artists, we have to work day jobs as well. We hustle. You know hustle. I know hustle. Tell me, what does your day look like when you're working at PYT?
Yep.
And then tell me, what does the day look like on set? So probably last year when you were filming from all sides.
Yeah. It's such a great question. So the biggest and most taxing job I have is being a mother to two small children.
Yes.
So I am woken up usually by my son or my daughter needing me. So my son wakes me up. He's an early riser, so he'll be up watching TV or playing a video game, and he'll...
What time?
This morning he was up at 6:45.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. But if it gets to like 7:30, I'm not out of bed. He'll just say, "Mommy, 7:30." So I get up, I get my two children off to school by myself because my husband is a shift worker. So he works at the ABC. So he's up very early.
Great, yeah.
Driving to the city to do his shift.
Oh, from Campbelltown.
Wow. So yeah, he hates the commute. Obviously.
Shout out to you, Alex.
Yeah. Shout out to my wonderful husband, Alex. He is really amazing. So I get the children off by myself, which is just horrible. Like getting children off to school is just really stressful. So yeah, it's packing lunches and doing hair and getting uniforms and, you know, making sure they have permission notes signed, all the kind of mum stuff that you do. And then they go off to school. My son walks to school. I cross the road with him because the worst road is our road. And then it's pretty much all downhill on one side of the road afterwards. So I cross the road with him, and then I drop my daughter off at daycare. That's always a struggle. My daughter's really stubborn. And then I drive to Fairfield, and then I'm in the office for a day. And that day in the office can look like meetings, it can look like budgets, it can look like lots of emails. But on a good week, I'm also teaching.
Yes.
I'm running workshops.
Yes.
I'm working with the ensemble. I'm writing a new play.
Yes.
I'm, giving advice to artists in residencies. I'm giving creative feedback to people. I'm building relationships with other arts organisations. So it's just a really wonderful job. But my favourite stuff is the floor work. It's when I'm in that theatre working with you all on something new. That's when it's really exciting for me. But I'm just around creativity all day. I'm hearing people rehearse and sing and dance, and it just gives me so much energy.
Nice.
I go eat some Chinese food for my lunch.
Nice. Yeah. Where do you go? Shout them out.
So I go to a place in Nita City.
Yep.
I don't know what it's called. It's just like a Chinese restaurant. It's a Chinese place in the food court in Nita City.
Yeah.
And it's really good. There was another place that was amazing and they moved and I was devo. It was just really, really good. You can get really great noodles, but anyway.
Yeah. So is that Chinese place your favourite place to eat at in Fairfield?
No, that's where I go most days because it's cheap and good.
Yeah.
If I'm having like my friend Faraz, who's also a filmmaker, came and took me to lunch and kind of had a pitch for me about a film. And we went to Shandy's.
Oh, nice. I haven't been there.
So Shandy's is just around the corner from PYT.
Yeah.
Oh, Frank's Lebanese is incredible.
Shout out Frank's Lebanese.
Shout out Frank's.
Shout out Lebanese food.
Lebanese food I actually find is the cuisine that feed, because you can service gluten-free people, you can service vegetarians.
Oh yes.
Do you know?
Yeah.
It's the one cuisine that kind of everybody can agree on. There's something for everybody. You can
That's
eat
true.
everyone can have hummus and most people can have bread, and if they can't have bread they can have hummus and tabbouleh and falafel.
That's it. Yeah.
So yeah.
So you have lunch at your Chinese place.
Yeah, and then I go home and then I'm doing second shift. So I'm often making dinner for my family.
Yep.
I am doing laundry.
Yep.
I am folding clothes. I'm going to the grocery store to get things we're running out of, all that fun mum stuff. And then when my children go to bed at about 8:30, I have my laptop out and then I'm doing Bina filmmaker stuff. So, when I was writing my film, this is when I would start writing. I would just power through. I would write from about 7. So my husband would take the kids and do dinner, bath and bed. And I would write from about 7 p.m. till midnight.
Yeah. I want. That's what I want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. So I write when my kids are in bed.
Yes.
So I sit down with my laptop and I do film stuff. So at the moment, because the film is finished, most of my film stuff is, dealing with distribution festivals, emailing budgets, all the boring stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what 90% of being an artist is email admin.
Yes. And you don't get paid for it.
No, you don't. You just have to do it. It's part of your maintenance.
You just got to do it.
It's looking at your website. It's, it's like press. It's just a lot of work. So that's what a typical day in the life of a PYT day is.
It's like a 12-hour day.
It's way longer than
It's very long.
It's like 7 till at least 10 usually.
Wow, well, I'm bad at maths. What is that?
15 hours?
15 hours.
Yeah.
But I relate. I'm obviously not a parent or a wife like you, but my days are that long as well. Yeah. And I think this is something that I really want to speak about on this podcast as well. Artists, we live long days.
Yeah, we do.
We live long days. And, whenever a friend's trying to catch up, sorry, we're busy. Let me just put you in the calendar. It's because we have things to do, so much admin, so much planning. But if we don't do it, our art doesn't get done.
Yeah, and this is what I say. What I find very frustrating, there are not many women with children I know who are artists.
Yes.
But I'm friends with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Because we all kind of gravitate together.
Yeah.
And I really hate, because I'm really exhausted all the time and I'm really tired all the time.
Yeah.
And when I tell people, I'm so exhausted between my job at PYT and my filmmaking and my children, I'm just spent.
Yeah.
And everyone's response is, well, just don't do your filmmaking. It's exhausting you.
No.
Do you know?
I know where this is going. Yeah. We've had this conversation.
Well, I'm just like, then why am I living if I can't do the thing that gives me life?
Yeah, you really don't want to live if you can't
make
art.
It sounds so dramatic, but it's actually how we feel. And
I know.
Do you know, it's just it really sucks that thing that we're doing that I know is uplifting to people is just the thing that nobody wants to pay for.
And it's uplifting to yourself as well.
Exactly.
It's like in the letter I wrote you, really long letter, but it was art keeps us sane. It keeps me sane.
For sure.
I know it keeps you sane.
For sure.
It's like my will to live.
I spent 8 years not making art. And I had a terrible drinking problem. Yeah. Yeah, because I was bored out of my skull. I was living in the inner west. I was doing all the things that I was told I had to do. I got a good, well-paid, big person job in the public service. I was living in the inner west with my husband. We had a 2-bedroom apartment in Stanmore. I had no kids. And I was working, good girl jobs. And I was just so unhappy. And I spent all my free time going to the pub and playing trivia. And I had a great time and I had a nice social life. But I drank a lot because I was so miserable.
Yes.
And I'm really so much more sensible now because I don't need to artificially inject that kind of excitement. In fact, I want to not have had anything to drink because I want to be focusing on my work.
Yeah.
So I think, it's taken a long time to cultivate this kind of discipline.
Yeah.
But I tell people, so when I have a film day, it's very different.
Yes, tell us.
Well, yeah, okay. So when I shot my film, it was just I had to just make sure someone else had my kids all the time.
Yes.
And the worst thing that happened was my kids got really sick, which was horrible. My kids were really ill when I made my
babies.
film. They both had gastro. Anyway, my daughter got very ill, blah, blah. But it's an intense day. So from all sides, we were shooting in the summer.
Yep.
So call time was usually around 9 or 10.
Yep.
And then we'd wrap at about 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So it was long days. But then, I didn't drink the entire time I was shooting my film, which is a big deal for me because, like I say, I like to have a beer and watch TV.
Yeah, we enjoy a beer together.
We do love our beer. So I would go home and just prepare for the next day. That's the most intense. So when you're shooting your film, it is really, you are in the trenches just solving problems every single day.
That's it. I mean, I've never shot my own film, but I've shot my own music videos, and that is just exhausting in itself, and that's like 1% of what you would do for your film.
That's true, but okay, when you're working on an album, so what's your creative process look like?
Right. A lot of planning as well, actually. Yeah,
it's a lot of moving parts.
It's a lot. It's a lot of it's also a lot of making use of when you have those resources. So when I'm there in the studio with my producer, I want to make use of that. So I want to make sure that I've gone in with some ideas and concepts that we can bounce off each other as well. Anyways, you make the song, you record it, and then you've got to get an engineer to mix and master it. You do that, all right? Then you got to give them the revisions, the notes. You got to fix that up, okay? And then you got to put it through distro. Now, I know movies have their own distro. Mm-hmm. Music has the same thing. It's a process. It's a long process. And then you want to do PR. You want to do marketing.
Yep.
And then it's out. And then you want to post it on the socials, share it around, look at the streams, blah, blah, blah. It is a lot. It's so much.
You can't do it unless it's your passion.
That's it.
Unless you're obsessed.
If you didn't love it, I couldn't do it if I didn't love it.
You can't muster up the energy to do it.
Right,
if you don't love it.
It's a lot.
So you do love it. And I think there's a lot of exhaustion with just sort of doing, it's just, I don't know, you're just filling your heart and your brain with all this stuff, and it's really good and it's good for your soul, but it's also just so tiring. And
it is tiring.
I think I just can't explain to people the exhaustion I feel. I'm so exhausted all the time.
I feel that, yeah. But I think you're a mother as well. That's the most demanding.
That's the most demanding thing I do, and it always irritates me. And I say this all the time. A lot of my filmmaking heroes are people like David Lynch and Robert Altman. And, they had big families and they were able to make their films, and it was because they had wives. I've got a wife. I've got a good husband.
You are the wife, yeah.
But I am the wife.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yes.
So I'm holding my family together and carving out moments. I will say this, though. Like, I make it sound really difficult, but most of us doom scroll for 2 hours.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yeah. Which
is in many ways, just as stressful because you're getting anxiety about what everyone's posting.
Right, yeah. That's very
so
true.
I feel like if you could replace your doom scrolling with like a productive habit, like writing, and I always say, like...
That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than... And I always say this, just write.
Just write.
Give yourself an hour.
Yes.
And if an hour is too much, give yourself half an hour. And if half an hour is too much, give yourself 15 minutes.
Yes.
Set the timer and just write for 15 minutes and you'll be amazed. That's what you do. When you write a film, you don't sit down and write. My script was 113 pages. Wow. You don't do it in one hit.
No way.
I would just write for a few hours every night, and then I got over 3 weeks. I had a really solid draft.
Amazing.
But even Twine's Party, the actual writing came together really quickly. We'd done all the work in the room. We'd done all the improvisation. We had done all the really amazing devising processes.
Yes.
And then when Kubra Siadi, the amazing writer who led the process with Twine's Party, when we sat down to write, we actually had done all the work.
Yeah. And
the writing took fast. Yeah.
That's also the beauty of devising a work as well. That was a really nice devising process, I think. But we just got to it. But I think also with your mentoring, like you've been mentoring me for 3 years now, you've given me a lot of advice on writing. I think you told me to write in 20-minute blocks at times as well. I think that came from you. I don't know, but that was really helpful.
Yeah.
But just doing it, just writing. And this is the thing that I see a lot of artists, especially young artists, are like, I can't start writing it. I just don't know how to start. Just do it.
You just have to do it.
And when you do it the first time, it's probably going to be shit, but that's okay. Just do it. Like, it's better having something there than not having anything at all.
This is what I say. So this is what I observe. A lot of people write a sentence and then they go, oh, that's shit. And they go, delete, 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 delete.
Yeah.
Then they write another sentence and they go, that's also shit. Delete, 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 delete. No.
Yeah.
Write for 15 minutes and let it be shit. And then you can go back and go, all right, that is shit and that needs work. But also that part is good.
That's it. Yeah.
So, and yeah, you can edit a shit page. You can't edit a blank page.
That's it. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, these kind of platitudes, they get repeated a lot, like in social media land, but they're all really, really true. And that's actually how I approach my writing as well, which is, you've just got to commit to, it's like, all right, well, I've just got to sit down and do it. And I do procrastinate. Not much. I'm pretty good. Because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I procrastinated when I didn't have kids. I would always when I had all the time in the world and I could have just been an amazing writer because my whole life was going to the pub and working a job I hated.
Yeah.
I didn't find the energy to do it. It was when I had children and I literally only had 2 hours to myself that I made those hours count, you know.
Lovely. We are running out of time. I have one we can talk all day.
We are good friends. We can talk all day.
If you want more of this, just join me and Bina for a beer one day. One more question. What has being a mentor at PYT taught you?
That's such a beautiful question. My name, and I said this in my job interview at PYT, so my name, Bhattacharya, means great teacher.
Lovely. Oh, really?
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
And in my culture, amongst Bengalis, teaching is actually really revered. It's seen as like, you know how like people say things like those who can do, those who can't teach? We don't see it that way. Teaching is very noble.
Yes.
You know, my father was an economics teacher, lecturer, professor. He saw that as like a really amazing calling.
Yeah.
Ravi Shankar, I think, said something like, it takes you 20 years to learn to play the sitar, 20 years to play it, and then 20 years to teach it. Do you know?
Yes.
So I think it's deeply rewarding. It keeps me very grounded. Do you know? I see the very practical barriers people have to the arts. I say this all the time. When I go out into like film land, I always feel like the rough kid who speaks a bit rough around the edges and doesn't look right, who comes from Western Sydney. But when I'm at PYT, I always feel like one of the most privileged people in the room. And I realize the middle classness, having a father that didn't lose status, having a mixed race parent and having a white mom in my corner. These were all things that really helped me become an artist. They were just natural God-given things that I didn't have to overcome, right? Yeah. So I feel like seeing this community in particular, which is really diverse, is super working class by background, has a lot of like not great infrastructure that the city would have, you know? Yeah. And we can talk about how that can be quite deliberate. But so when I see the kinds of barriers that people from this community have to the arts, it's always very humbling because I feel like all of you are just as creative and brilliant as me. So it's kind of my responsibility to uplift you. But yeah, I just feel like someone once said like activism is the rent we pay for living on this planet. And I kind of feel like I am fortunate enough to be an artist. And so mentoring is how I give back. But I also really enjoy it because I get to watch you grow. Yes. I get to watch people blossom. Like I'm a mum to my kids, but I feel like I'm a mum to all of you as well. I feel like or a big sister, do you know? Or a cool older cousin maybe. I don't know.
You are. I do view you as like a very cool older cousin.
Yeah.
Who I can't believe I get to have these conversations with you.
Yeah, but I think like I learn from you. I learn about culture. I learn about different cultures. You know, you've taught me heaps. I think, working with young people, they've got a lot of energy and they're not like, I'm so jaded and cynical and it's really nice to be around people that have energy and have spirit and are nice and are a bit less jaded. And it's also just really hopeful, you know? I say that all the time. Like I'm a really cynical person a lot of the time and my work is edgy and angry, but the work I do at PYT is so hopeful because it's like, no, we're working towards having a fairer cultural landscape in Australia, having Western Sydney get the recognition it deserves for having immense cultural wealth, for being so full of the most incredible people who every day are actually negotiating very complicated cultural things and we never get really any credit for that.
That's true.
Whereas anyone who's grown up in Western Sydney just knows how to do this stuff really well. I just feel like it's really hopeful and it's really nice and I'm really sad about the fact that I will have to leave one day because I don't think it's right for me to kind of be in the youth space forever. But I don't know, it's just really nice.
It is sad. I don't want to think about that either.
Well, I just want to say it is really nice. It's really rewarding, and I feel like you will be happiest as an artist. It can be very lonely, isolating work.
Yes.
But if you kind of have one arm of what you do in kind of building community and a community practice, I think you will have a much richer and happier life. And I do want to say this. I'm just about to turn 38, so I'm in a week's time, on the 10th of July, I will have my 38th birthday. And I actually think I'm doing pretty well because at 38, I have a film I'm really proud of to my name. I have a play that you started, Twine's Party, to my name, which I'm very proud of. I have a program, which is the ensemble at PYT Fairfield, to my name. And I have 2 children.
That's it.
So the exhaustion isn't for nothing.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Amazing,
I have stuff to
Bina.
my name that I'm really proud of.
I hope at 38 I can be there as well.
You will, because you're halfway there. I didn't have a job in the arts till I was 34, Charnel, and I say this all the time. There's nothing, you're already doing better than I was at the same age because you're driven and you're smart. And, I think you'll just see that. But yes, it's really, really lovely. And the biggest reward in my work is watching all these amazing young people just thrive, and you have thrived. But we can't take all the credit for it. You came hungry and interested and just that absolute, if I don't make art, I'm going to explode and die vibe from you.
It's true.
So let's make it happen. Let's make some art.
Thank you, Bina. What a nice ending point. I will end by saying it has been an honor to be taught and mentored by you.
It's an honor to teach and mentor you. Yeah.
So thank you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience on this podcast. And thank you for being our first guest.
It's the best. I am the first, guest. What an honor. Thank you, Charnel.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody in podcast land. Bye.
Bye. See you next time.